Yo, what's going on, guys? Dirca Master here, and we're doing another Dirca deck tech. Today, the commander we're going to be looking at is my Brion Stoutarm, the deck I've affectionately named YEET. And this is a 4 mana, 2 red white, 4/4 legendary giant warrior. He's got lifelink, and he also has the ability to pay 1 red mana and tap him, sacrifice another creature. Brion does damage equal to the sacrificed creature's power to target player. Now, essentially, we can sacrifice our things, or optimally, what we'd want to do is sacrifice our opponent's things. So, we have different threat effects, such as the classic Act of Treason. For 3 mana, we can gain control of target creature until end of turn, untap it, and give it haste. And then we have a fair bit of variants on this exact same effect, such as Mark of Mutiny. This is a 3 mana sorcery again. Gain control of target creature, it gains haste and untap it, but it also gets a +1 counter on it. So it gets even bigger. And then we have the Phyrexian mana version, Act of Aggression, which is 5 mana. However, it's 3 colors, and then for the 2 red, you can either pay 2 of the red, or I'm sorry, for each of these red symbols, you can either pay a red mana or 2 life. And then it's essentially the same thing as Act of Treason. And then we have Word of Seizing. This is essentially the same thing, but at instant speed for 5 mana, and it also has Split Second, meaning it cannot be responded to by any spells. So basically, it stops things from being able to go on the stack, and it resolves on its own. And then we have kind of a combo ability. We have Grab the Reins. This is 4 mana for an instant. You can choose one. Until end of turn, gain control of target creature, it gains haste. Of note, it does not untap it, which is interesting. Or you could sacrifice a creature, and this deals damage equal to that creature's power to a creature or player. Or, if you pay a grand total of 7 mana, you could do both. So this is kind of like a backup Brion, with the Act of Treason effect built right in. And we have a janky way to do it, which is Frenzied Fugue. This is a 4 mana aura. You enchant a permanent when it enters the battlefield or at the beginning of your upkeep, so both of them, gain control of target of the enchanted permanent until end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste. So this is a repeatable way to steal something. However, it's just another way to grab it and yeet it at somebody, because almost certainly we're gonna not only hit them with it, but sacrifice it after. And we also have one of the strongest cards in the deck, Captivating Crew. This is a 4 mana 4/3 human pirate, and for 4 mana, 3 and a red, gain control of target creature an opponent controls until end of turn. Untap it, it gains haste. Activate this ability only anytime you could cast a sorcery. This is a repeatable Act of Treason for 4 mana on a creature. Very, very nice, very handy. Very mana intensive, though. Now, sometimes we can't take control of our opponent's things, so that's why we have a few different ways to kind of make use of that. One of the newest options that I so far have been enjoying is Urbrask's Forge. This is 3 mana, 2 and a red for an artifact at the beginning of combat on your turn. Put an oil counter on this, and then create an X1 Phyrexian red horror creature token. It has trample and haste, and the X is the number of oil counters on this artifact. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So the idea is you move to combat, and however many turns this has been on the battlefield, you make a creature with that much power and 1 toughness. You throw it at you basically attack, and if it gets blocked before damage, you're going to throw it at somebody. But because it's got 1 toughness trample, they usually don't block it, so you get to hit and then throw it with Brion afterwards. And then we have a card that I have a bit of a love-hate with this card, because sometimes it works out really well, sometimes it doesn't. Rite of the Raging Storm. Bit of a pet card for me. 5 mana, 3 red for an enchantment. Creatures named Lightning Rager can't attack you or planeswalkers you control, aka Goad. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts a 5/1 elemental creature token named Lightning Rager on the battlefield. It gains trample and haste, and at the beginning of the next end step, sacrifice this creature. Now, of note, I guess they could sacrifice this. I don't see any way that says they can't. It hasn't come up yet. Not really, but the idea is that you give them a free elemental to hit people with, but also you get one on your turn that you can hit somebody with, and if they try to block it and kill it, you just throw it at somebody's face. Another one that I remember from back in my days in Standard is Shadowflame Conjuring. 4 mana enchantment. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay a single red mana. If you do, create a token that's a copy of it, and then it has haste, but you have to exile it at the beginning of the next end step. But for us, that's not going to be important because we're just going to throw it anyway. So this is a great way to basically create a token of something that you would like to yeet at somebody's face without having to actually lose the creature. It's a single use, but it's nice to basically get another option. Now, one of the cards that just screams shenanigans in this deck is Blade of Selves. For 2 mana, this equipment says the equipped creature has Myriad, meaning whenever you attack an opponent, you create a copy of it attacking one of the opponents that you were not attacking. Or each of the opponents you were not attacking. And then you exile those at the beginning, or the end of combat, sorry, and it equips for 4. So the idea is if you have a creature that's a non-legendary creature, and you equip it with this, and you swing, you'll create tokens that you can hit somebody with the tokens, and then with the trigger to sacrifice them on the stack, you can throw them at somebody and do the damage again. Similar to the Shadowflame Conjuring, this is a semi-repeatable way to get tokens of something that you want to throw at somebody without having to lose the creature. Now, there are quite a lot of key creatures in the deck. It's primarily a creature deck because of that. Similar to the Blade of Selves, we have a couple of creatures with the Myriad mechanic built in. The Warchief Giant is a 5 mana 5/3 with haste, and it has Myriad. And then we have the Herald of the Host. This is very similarly a creature with 5 mana, 3 white for a 4/4 flying vigilance in Myriad. So it blocks as well as attacks. And again, they both make tokens when they swing at one opponent. It makes tokens swinging at the other opponent, or other opponents, which you can sacrifice without losing the initial creature. Part of the Dream combo is the Evra combo, where it's a 6 mana legendary 4/4 avatar with lifelink. And for 4 mana, you can exchange your life total with this creature's power. Oh, note, you could do this at instant speed multiple times in case somebody tries to hit you for enough damage to kill you at instant speed. So keep that in mind. But the idea is that you basically play this and you swap life totals, hit somebody, and then don't lose the Evra, yeet the Evra, and kill 2 people in one combat step with a single creature. That would be ideal, but either way, it's a great, hilarious threat on the table, is what we'll say. One of the most shenanigans cards I've ever dealt with is Yosei, the Morning Star. This is a 6 mana 5/5 legendary dragon spirit with flying. When it dies, target player skips his or her next untap step, or I'm sorry, and both. I always forget that's not or, right? And then tap 5 target permanents that player controls. I always forget these are not ors, either ors. These are both. So tap 5 things and that player doesn't untap during the next untap step. When you have this on a Blade of Selves, you can immediately sacrifice all the, or any sort of the Shadowflame Conjuring, any form of copying this. You can you will be forced to sacrifice some of them to the legendary clause, and immediately start tapping things down and stopping people from untapping on their turns. It's absolutely hilarious, and I love it. Another one of these legendary dragon spirits is the pseudo board wipe on a stick. This is Ryusei the Falling Star. For a 6 mana, 5 and a red, this is a 5/5 legendary dragon spirit with flying. When it dies, it deals 5 damage to each creature without flying. So you hit somebody for 5 and deal 5 to all the creatures. Of note, you're going to want Brion to be either indestructible or pumped up in some way in order to survive this. But if somebody's going to go wide and probably hit you in the face, it's a great way to clear their board and not die on that turn. We also have the Sunscorch Regent. This is a 5 mana, 3 white, 4/3 flying dragon. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, put a +1 counter on this, and you gain a life. So essentially, the main purpose of it is to get little bits of life gain in case we need it. But really, they play things. This gets bigger. We yeet it when it's big. Great yeet target. Similarly, but a little bit more under our own control, is the classic Shivan Dragon. 6 mana for a 5/5 dragon with flying and fire breathing, meaning you can pay 1 mana and this creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So leave open 1 red mana, put the rest into making its power bigger, and hit somebody and then throw it at their face. And then we also have one of the scariest cards in the deck that has led to more victories than anything else, I think. Stalking Vengeance. 7 mana for a 5/5 avatar with haste. Whenever another creature you control dies, it deals damage equal to its power to target player. Essentially doubling the damage that Brion is doing. Of note, Brion's is lifelink, so you gain the life back. This would not, because it's the creature that dies that does the power, not Brion. Or does the damage equal to power. So I'm pretty sure if the creature's lifelink it'll work, but either way, most of the time it doesn't matter. This is utterly terrifying. And then we also have a few utility creatures that are quite important, like the Remorseful Cleric. This is a 2 mana, 2/1 flying spirit. You can sacrifice it to exile all cards from a single player's graveyard. You gotta have graveyard hate in Commander. It's too common of a problem. Then we have the Hellkite Charger. This is a 6 mana, 5/5 flying haste dragon. And when it attacks, you can pay 7 mana. If you do, untap all attacking creatures. After that phase, there's an additional combat phase. This is a great way to essentially machine gun down your opponents with multiple Brion triggers if the game goes long enough and you have enough mana. It's not a guarantee, but it's a scary little thing to have as an option on the board. Also, multiple combat steps is, in theory, enough to kill people on its own most of the time. Another huge help to the deck is Iroas, God of Victory. This is a 4 mana, 2 red, white, legendary enchantment god. It's a 7/4 with indestructible. And as long as your devotion to red and white is less than 7, it's not a creature. Meaning the pips and the mana cost of all permanents you control, if you have a grand total of 7 between red and white, it is a creature. Otherwise, it is not. It's just an enchantment. And then it says prevent all damage that would be dealt to attacking creatures you control, and creatures you control have menace. So he loves the combat stuff. Another great utility creature is good old fashioned Mom. This is the Mother of Runes, 1 mana, 1/1 human cleric. You can tap, and target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn. We also have the Bruce Tarl, the boorish herder, sorry. 4 mana, 2 red, white for 3/3 legendary human ally. When he enters the battlefield or attacks, target creature you control gains double strike and lifelink until end of turn. And he also has partner, which is relevant for being your commander at times, but not in this deck. He is hugely helpful to basically make something hit really, really hard and gain you a ton of life back, because the deck has to take a lot of risks. So being able to gain the life back really, really helps. We also have the Tyrant's Familiar. This is a 7 mana, 5 red red, 5/5 dragon with flying and haste. And he has the Lieutenant ability, which says, as long as you control your commander, this creature gets +2/+2 and has, whenever it attacks, it deals 7 damage to target creature defending player controls. So essentially it becomes a 7/7 that deals 7 to a creature when it attacks somebody. Not the most relevant, however, being a 7 mana, most likely 7/7 with haste, means it can do at least 14 damage and 7 to a blocker to prevent that block. Next up we have the Dawnbreak Reclaimer. This is a 6 mana 5/5 angel with flying. At the beginning of your end step, choose a creature card in an opponent's graveyard. Then that player chooses one in yours. You each return one of those cards to the battlefield under your control. Now, I believe you have to have legal targets in order for this to work. But the important part is that if we have to start yeeting our own creatures, we can start essentially getting them back. Also, it helps get our opponent's things back so that we can take it and yeet it once more, should we have the resources. And then we have the Bastion Protector. This is a 3 mana 3/3 human soldier. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2 and have indestructible. Great way to deal with a lot of board wipes and things and still be able to keep your commander around. And then we have the Tauren Mauler. This is a 3 mana 2 and a red 2/2 shapeshifter changeling, meaning it's all creature types at all times. And whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may put a +1 counter on this creature. So it sits around for a while and gets absolutely massive. Great target to yeet. Another fun one that's great to make copies of is the Inferno Titan. Classic creature. 6 mana, 4 red red for a 6/6 giant. You can pay 1 mana and it has fire breathing, meaning you can give it +1/+0 till end turn for each time you activate this ability. And then when it enters the battlefield or attacks, it deals 3 damage, divided as you choose among any 1, 2, or 3 targets between creatures and or plays. I believe it's any target on the errata text. But yeah, because it says player, so pretty much any target. Great to copy because you'll get multiple triggers and the copies usually end up with haste. So you can deal 3, attack, and get another 3. And the fact that it has fire breathing makes it a great yeet target as well. And then we also have a bit of utility cards in general to help us out with these combat steps, such as the Always Watching. This is a 3 mana, 1 white white enchantment. Non-token creatures you control have +1/+1 in vigilance, making it so that it's a little bit less risky to attack because we will be able to block. And then we also have the Citadel Siege. This is a 4 mana, 2 white white enchantment. As it enters the battlefield, you're going to choose either Khans or Dragons. If you choose Khans, at the beginning of combat on your turn, put 2 +1 counters on target creature you control. Or Dragons, at the beginning of combat on each opponent's turn, tap target creature that opponent controls. It's situational based on the state of the game when you play this. More often than not, we're going for the Khans to grow the creatures that we're going to yeet, but sometimes it's not an option. We also have a fun one that kind of pulls double duty. This is the Marshal's Anthem. This is 4 mana, 2 white white for an enchantment with multi-kicker, where you can pay 1 and a white as many times as you want to kick the spell, and creatures you control get +1/+1. That's a static ability, just +1/+1. It's an anthem. However, when it enters the battlefield, return up to X target creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of times this was kicked. So essentially, it's a revive spell and an anthem all in one. Very, very handy after board wipes or getting late into the game after you sacrifice a lot of your own things and you need them. Then we have the Silent Gravestone, another piece of graveyard hate. 1 mana artifact. Creature cards can't be the targets of spells or abilities. I'm sorry, creatures in graveyard. No, not even creatures. Cards in graveyard. That's why it didn't sound right. Reading the card explains the card. Cards in graveyards can't be the target of spells or abilities. You can pay 4 mana and exile this and all cards from all graveyards and then draw a card. And then one of the more situationally adept cards is the Boros Charm. This has saved my bacon in so many ways, multiple times. 2 mana, red and a white for an instant. Choose one. Deal 4 damage to target player. Permanents you control gain indestructible till end of turn, or target creature gains double strike until end of turn. More often than not, that permanents you control gain indestructible is the choice. However, it's versatile enough that I've used all the modes at least once. Then we have the Loxodon Warhammer. Great way to not only give our creatures lifelink, but most importantly, a boost to power and trample, meaning they'll get through for combat damage more often than not. Because when a creature has a high amount of power and trample, they're very unlikely to be blocked. So great way to pump something up, get some reward out of it, get them through with combat damage, and then get to yeet them for even more. And then similarly, we have the Whisper Silk Cloak. This is a 3 mana artifact equipment, similar to the last one, except this one just says equipped creature can't be blocked and has Shroud. And it equips for 2 mana, whereas the Loxodon Warhammer equips for 3. This is a great way to get creatures in that you want to get combat damage on somebody without having to worry about any pesky blockers. And then the next piece of equipment that we have is the Conqueror's Flail. This is one that will probably be removed at some point. It is more of a random utility card that is holding a slot for something in the future. 2 mana for an equipment artifact. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each color among permanents you control, which at times is only going to be 2 unless I take somebody else's things, and then it can go higher. But the important part, and the reason it's in the deck at all, as long as this is equipped to a creature, your opponents can't cast spells during your turn, and it equips for 2 mana. This essentially makes it so that combat tricks are not an option, and if I want to cast something, they can't counter it during my turn. Very, very handy. Great in the control matchups. And then last out of this little package here is the Swiftfoot Boots, the classic. 2 mana for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature gains hexproof and haste, and it equips for 1 mana. Great for Brion to not only get him to activate his ability right away, but also to keep him protected from removal. And then speaking of removal, we have an odd bit of removal because our creatures, not only are the creatures we're playing some removal, but the commander plus all the threatened effects are removal. So it's mostly things like Disenchant. This is 1 and a white for an instant, destroy target artifact or enchantment. And then similarly, but on a different scale, we have Orum's Thunder. This is a 3 mana instant, 2 and a white, and it has kicker for 1 red, so a grand total of 4 mana. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. If it was kicked, it deals damage equal to that permanent's converted mana cost to target creature. So you're kind of doing double duty of hitting a creature and also mainly getting rid of a enchantment or artifact. I don't kick it very often, but sometimes it's relevant. And again, getting rid of blockers is a thing for this deck. Now, the same kind of thing on a stick in a way. Core Sanctifiers, 3 mana, 2 and a white for a 2/3 core cleric. And it has kicker for a single white, meaning you could pay 3, or you could pay 3 and then an additional white, and it'll be kicked. When it enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So it only happens if it was kicked. However, that's usually why we play the creature. And then another fun, versatile card is the not Mana Confluence. It's a very different card. Fiery Confluence. 4 mana, 2 red, choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. It deals 1 damage to each creature, it deals 2 damage to each opponent, or destroy target artifact. So essentially, this can do a mini board wipe, hit everybody for 6, or destroy 3 artifacts, or any mix of all these things all together. Very versatile, very fun, and also a bit of a headache when you're trying to figure out what's the best situation when you're looking for lines of play. And then sometimes you just gotta hit the fucking button. We have the Nevinyrral's Disc. This is the go nuclear, the go nuclear option. 4 mana for an artifact that comes in tapped. You can pay 1 mana and tap it. Destroy all artifacts, all creatures, and all enchantments. It leaves planeswalkers and now the new battles and lands, but that's about it. Destroy all the things is essentially what this says. And that's for when we're getting overwhelmed by a superior board state. Now we have a bit of card draw in this deck because we really need to keep up on resources, considering we're in red and white and we don't do that very well. So we have a few options, some are better than others. We have the Bomat Courier. This is a 1 mana 1/1 artifact creature with haste. When it attacks, exile the top card of your library face down underneath the Bomat, or essentially you only have access to it thanks to Bomat Courier, but it's in its own special little exile zone. You can pay 1 mana, that's a red, discard your hand, sacrifice this creature, put all the cards exiled this way into your hand. Meaning, you play them, you attack a bunch of times, and you exile a bunch of cards underneath it. Always leave a red mana open whenever you're playing this card so that you don't get ruined. But once you've run out of cards or the cards in your hand are shit and not helpful, you can just sacrifice them to refill. It happens a fair bit. Like it's more helpful than you would really think. We have the classic Skull Clamp. This is a 1 mana artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1. And whenever the equipped creature dies, you draw 2 cards and it equips for 1. Great way to just, if you have extra mana, slap it on something that you're going to yeet anyway and get a couple cards out of it, as well as an additional damage. And then we have Tormenting Voice. This is classic red card draw. 1 and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this, discard a card, and then draw 2. So pitch 2, or spend 2 cards to draw 2 cards. And then we have Reforge the Soul. This is a 5 mana sorcery. Each player discards his or her hand and then draws 7. Sometimes you gotta live with the idea of giving your opponents new cards. However, sometimes this can really mess up their game plan and help yours a lot. And then it also is a miracle, meaning if you were to draw this card, you may reveal it and pay the miracle cost to cast it right away. Sometimes relevant, mostly a way to just do it on the cheap if possible. And then we have the Dragon Mage. I almost said Maze, but that's a different thing. 7 mana, 5 red for a 5/5 Dragon Wizard with flying. When it deals combat damage to a player, each player discards his or her hand and then draws 7 cards. So essentially, the same thing on a stick that has to hit people in order to do it. And then we have the Runehorn Hellkite. This is a 6 mana, 5 and a red, 5/5 dragon with flying. Pay 6 mana, 5 and a red. Exile this from your graveyard. Each player discards his or her hand and then draws 7. And then we have the Mind's Eye. This is a card that I don't see enough people play, in my opinion. I like it a lot. 5 mana artifact. Whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 mana. If you do, you also draw a card. That counts for every player's turn on each of their draws, on your turn, everything. You're guaranteed to at least be able to spend 3 mana in a full pod to draw 3 additional cards without having to discard them because it'll be on your opponent's turn. Then we have Outpost Siege, another classic form of card draw for the red decks. This is 3 and a red for an enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, choose dragons or cons. Cons, at the beginning of your upkeep, exile top card of your library, and then until end of turn, you may cast that card I'm sorry, play that card. Important. It does not say cast, it says play, meaning it does work with lands. And then the other option for dragon is whenever a creature leaves the battle. I'm sorry. Whenever a creature you control leaves the battlefield, this deals 1 damage to target creature or player. Not super relevant in this deck, even though there are lots of things leaving the battlefield. It doesn't care how it left, it just says leave. Great with myriad tokens, but not super great with the overall strategy. 9 times out of 10, you're more likely to choose the card draw option. And then we have quite a bit of mana rocks because we're in Boros, so mana ramp's a bit hard. We have the Boros Signet, 2 mana for a artifact that says pay 1, add 2 mana, red and white to your mana pool. And then we have the Cultivator's Caravan, which pulls double duty. It's a 3 mana artifact that adds 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. But if you tap a creature with at least 3 power, any number of creatures with a grand total of 3 power or more, it can become a 5/5 creature instead because it's a vehicle. And it still has the same mana ability, so you can literally tap it to pay for you to yeet this at somebody's face with Brion. But it's there because it pulls double duty, creature if needed, but also it's a mana rock. Then we have the classic Fellwar Stone, 2 mana for an artifact that taps to add 1 mana of any color that a land an opponent controls could produce. And then we have the, similar to the first one, Boros Cluestone, 3 mana for an artifact that just adds either a red or a white to your mana pool. And you can pay a red and a white and sacrifice it and tap it to draw a card. And then a bit of a weird one that might come out for more optimal cards in the future. Urgolem's Eye. This is a 4 mana artifact that adds 2 mana to your mana pool. It's a really bad Soul Ring, essentially. But they can't all be Soul Ring. This one, however, can because it is Soul Ring. 1 mana for essentially the same thing as what we just saw. Worse than Soul Ring is Mind Stone. 2 mana for an artifact that adds 1 color to your mana pool. And then you can pay 1 and tap it and sack it to draw a card. And then we have the card that ever since it was first printed has had to go in pretty much every commander deck ever. Arcane Signet. 2 mana for an artifact that taps to add 1 mana of any color in your commander's color identity. And then Commander's Sphere. 3 mana. Same thing, except it can also be sacrificed to draw a card. Of note, it doesn't matter whether you've tapped it for mana or not. You can still sacrifice it at any point without any additional cost to draw a card. Then we also have some things to help us get out some extra ramp without being a mana rock, such as the Wayfarer's Bauble. 1 mana for an artifact, you could pay 2 and tap it and sack it. Search the library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield tapped and shuffle. Ramp is hard to come by in Boros. We take it how we can. So we play things like Curse of Opulence. 1 red mana for an Aura Curse enchant player. Whenever the enchanted player is attacked, create a colorless artifact token called Gold, which is essentially better treasure. The gold says sacrifice it to add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. It does not need to tap, which is how it differs from treasure. Each opponent attacking that player also has the same effect. So if I attack a player enchanted with this, I get a gold. On somebody else's turn, if they attack that player, we each get a gold. I get 1 and the player attacking that player, the enchanted player, gets a gold. So it's a little bit risky to ramp your opponents. However, if you really need somebody dead, it's a great way to put a target on their back. And again, we really need ramps. We take that. And then we have a card I have not gotten to use yet, but I slapped in here immediately when I got it. Deep Known Terramancer. 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/2 gnome wizard with flash, meaning you can cast it at any point in the game at instant speed, essentially. And then it has the ability called Mold Earth. Whenever 1 or more lands enter the battlefield under an opponent's control without being played, meaning not their land for turn, but anytime they play some sort of ramp spell or any sort of effect like that, you may search the library for a Plains card, put it on the battlefield, and tapped, and then shuffle. Do this only once each turn. Powerful yet restrictive. It's interesting. I haven't gotten to use it quite yet, but it's in here for whenever it does happen. And then we have the non-basic lands, the classic command tower, add 1 mana of any color to your mana pool. I'm sorry, in your commander's color identity to your mana pool. Gotta get this out of here. And then we have the Opal Palace. This is tap to add 1. Is that color? Yeah, 1 colorless to your mana pool, and then you can pay 1, add a mana of your commander's color identity, and if this mana was spent to cast your commander, it enters with a +1 counter for each time you've cast it from the command zone this game. A great way to pump up your commander, and a nice utility spell as well. Great way to filter mana as well. And then we have Sacred Foundry. This is notably a typed land. It's both a mountain and a plains at the same time. When it enters the battlefield, you may pay 2 life. If you do, if you don't, it enters tapped. So these are your classic shock lands. And then we have the Clifftop Retreat. This is a land that enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a mountain or a plains, which the last one was in fact a mountain and a plains. And it taps for red or white. Then we have the Boros Garrison. This is your bounce land, or the Guru lands as it were. When it enters the battlefield, it enters tapped, and you may return. You have to return a land you control to its owner's hand. So essentially, you're going to bounce something that has some sort of enter effect, ideally, or a basic, whatever helps out the most. However, this land taps for both a red and a white, not red or white. We have the Boros Guildgate, the classic budget land, enters tapped, can tap for either one, red or white. The Windscarred Crag, same thing, except when it enters, you also gain a life. And the even more similar to the Guildgate, Stone Quarry, enters tapped, taps for red or white. And then we have the Painland, Battlefield Forge, taps for colorless, or you can add a red or white to your mana pool, and this deals 1 damage to you. And then we have the Cycle Lands, the Forgotten Cave, enters tapped, adds 1 red to your mana pool if you tap it. However, more often than not, it's there for cycling. Pay 1 red mana, discard this card to draw a new one. Stops you from flooding out in the classic Boros situation. Same thing except for white. Secluded Step, enters tapped, can tap for white, and you can pay a white to discard it to draw a new card. And then the last out of the non-basics is Spine Rock Knoll. This is a hideaway land, so when it enters the battlefield, you're going to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You're going to choose one of them and exile it essentially in its own zone, but underneath this land. And then it taps for 1 red mana. Oh, and this land enters tapped. I don't know if I mentioned that. So enters tapped, you look at the top 4, pick a card, and then you can pay 1 red mana and tap this, and you may play the exiled card without paying its mana cost as long as an opponent has lost 7 more life. Has been dealt 7 more damage this turn. Not lost life, been dealt damage. I think there is a difference, but I'm not sure. Usually this is just throw something at somebody with Brion and get to free cast something that was exiled underneath this. And then we have a grand total of 12 plains and 12 mountains. A lot of basics, but this deck was built pretty much on a bit of a budget like all my other decks. However, I don't own a lot of the good mana base options, We do have a Sacred Foundry and a Clifftop Retreat, so we do own some cool things, but not too many. Also, the deck kind of just works with an even mix of colors, but not a lot of colors, if that makes sense. Most of the stuff is just make sure I have white to cast the things and red to yeet them with Brion. But ladies and gentlemen, that's pretty much the deck. If you want to see the full deck list, you can check the Moxfield link in the description. And then if you want to see gameplay with this, you can do so not only on other YouTube channel or videos on this channel, but on the streams at Dirca Monster on Twitch. And then if you liked the video, make sure you click the appropriate button to do so. If you disliked it, hit the other one. If you want to suggest any cards that you think should go in here, you can feel free to leave a comment. I'm always looking to upgrade when I can. If it's a very fitting card, I'll go out of my way to purchase it if it's within my budget that feels reasonable. For the most part, though, I build these decks by just opening cards and putting them in from precons or packs or whatnot, what have you. But if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you subscribe to the channel. We have other deck tech videos, and we're planning to do many more in the future. This deck plays semi-aggressively. It's a lot of setup for the payoff, but the payoff's pretty high, and it can lead to some fun shenanigans. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I got for you. I hope you like this video, and I will catch you guys later.